Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming to our panel. I'm Danielle Bainbridge. As you heard from the introduction, I'm an assistant professor at Northwestern University, and I was the host of U.S. History to 1865, one of the first study hall courses that launched. I'm going to give everyone else a chance just so you know whose face matches whose name, so I'll pass it to you, Hank.
I'm Hank Green. I am a YouTuber who tripped and fell down into this.
Hi, I'm Katie Kurtz. I am the global head of learning at YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Maria Anguiano. I'm the executive vice president of the Learning Enterprise at Arizona State University.
Awesome. So everyone here is involved with study hall in some way or capacity, but we're going to start off with like a really basic introductory question, which is, what inspired you to want to help aspiring college learners?
First, I have to say thank you to the people in the front who took up the first 2 rows, because we can't see any further than that. Those lights are, we're a part of the live streamed portion, I think, so they really brought out the big lights. This is intense.
It is quite bright.
But it looks entirely full because y'all in the first 2 rows. So I had to make a YouTube video one day because we had an agreement, me and my brother, and I didn't know what to talk about. So I made a video about the circulatory system because I knew about that, and it did fine, but it was a lot of work, and then. But it felt really good. It felt like better than my average YouTube video because it felt like it was doing more work than the average YouTube video. And then at some point, our friends at YouTube were like, "What if you could make more stuff if we gave you money?" And we were like, "Yes." And that's how Crash Course happened, which really does feel like falling down into this. It was not a strategic thing, but I feel very, very grateful and lucky.
Well, we do as well. So I guess I have been on this mission to help students get into college and to succeed for over 20 years now. But it wasn't until I joined YouTube 4 years ago that I started to think about that mission from a slightly different perspective. The scope of learning that happens on the platform is really remarkable. Of our 2 billion monthly logged in users, nearly all of them say they use the platform for knowledge and information. And so we want to empower those billions of learners to go further by breaking down barriers to high impact learning experiences. And when so much of traditional higher education struggles with student retention and persistence, we see the exact opposite on YouTube. We see learners showing up every day. They're engaging in really complex concepts. They're building communities around that content where they're supporting each other. And we just felt like there was a lot more that we could do to take that intrinsic motivation to learn in a love of learning in an informal platform and maybe channel that into external recognition for your learning, the bridge between informal to formal learning, as it were. And in the case of study hall, maybe for some folks that never believed they had that path before.
Well, I would say that I think for me, it really came from my lived experience. You know, my parents came to the U.S. from Mexico about 45 years ago, and they only had a 6th grade education. And so, the reason my mom didn't go on after 6th grade was because her parents couldn't afford to do it, right? In Mexico, you had to pay for middle school, you had to pay for high school, and she was 1 out of 7, so there was no way that was going to happen to her. And so, being here in this country, she was like, "Mija, you have to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you." And so that's always been really instilled in me from the very, very beginning of my life. But it was a really long, arduous process to get here on the stage from where I started, right? And so I remember very vividly talking to my mom about applying to college and, telling her, well, there's this school that I don't really know that much about, and they have a program to study something that I actually also don't know that much about. And the cost of it is almost twice of what you make a year. And I'm like, but can you sign here and here in my application process? and I think we can design a better future for our students in our community. So that's why I do this work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I'll also answer that one in that I am an accidental educator in many senses of the word. I went to graduate school because I liked spending time alone with old books and became a historian. I had no grand vision of pedagogy or what it meant to be in the classroom. And then one day in grad school, I got a cold call on the department phone from PBS saying that they were looking for me and wanted to see if I was interested in hosting a history show. And the administrator and I laughed our heads off because I was like, oh, this is some new kind of scam for lonely academics where they get you to send their credit card number and then they tell you it's PBS and whatever. And so we Lisa and I, who's the administrator at the time, we were really laughing about it. And then I called my mom that night and she goes, maybe just return the call. See if it's real, because what's the worst that could happen? If it's really a scam, you'll figure it out. And that kind of launched my beginning of using YouTube as a platform to educate general audiences, larger audiences. And then I, after grad school, went on to college. But I think I approached education always as a learner. I love learning something new. I'm always excited to have new knowledge and to really approach a classroom with an exciting way. And I think that's the excitement that I bring when I start a new project or a project like this, which is so amazing to me. So I wanted to move on into a little bit more of what Maria was talking about and just ask you what your college process looked like when you were transitioning from high school to college. I know for all of us that was a while ago, but I think it's still relevant to think about what those challenges were and how maybe study hall addresses some of them.
I mean, I had the opposite experience where I was a third, fourth generation college student who my dad sat me down and here are 4 schools, you should apply to these 4 schools. And I was like, okay. And we went and visited 2 of them, and at one of them we just watched Grey's Anatomy the whole time, and I was like, that seems not fun. So I went to the other one. Yeah, and I went to a not particularly selective and quite expensive liberal arts school because that's it's so. I think it's kind of important to understand the dichotomy that the power structure that is still around and very present between people for whom school is inevitable and easy and people for whom it is. Neither of those things. And when we first sat down with ASU and your team to think through, we have this thing that is a credible, exciting, well-known property in the space. Crash Course is used by a lot of people. What's the best thing to do with that? And to sit down and actually spend the time staring at the problems for a little bit and seeing the parts where people really get let down was super valuable and really changed how I thought about what we were doing and also how I thought about what we were going to do together.
Yeah, I also was just incredibly privileged to have had no lack of support at all in my college process. My parents' lives have been completely transformed by college, and I grew up with those stories around the dinner table all the time about their ancestors who hadn't had access to education. And so it just seemed like a given that I was going to go and that they were going to do whatever they could to support me along the way. As we've been working on study hall, the learner journey that I keep close in my mind, and the one that is personal to me, is actually my mom's story. 60 years ago, her high school decided she wasn't college material. They said her high school diploma was going to be end of the road for her, and she thought she could do more. She really believed in herself, and she started a 2-year program at her local community college. She then turned that into credits at a pretty rigorous 4-year university. She went on to graduate school. She got a PhD. She became a professor. Her academic career was far from over, and it was because she really believed in herself. And I feel that study hall is the promise to a lot of learners like my mom, that maybe they too can believe that they belong on a path to college if they want one, and anything they can imagine for themselves on the other side.
I talked a little bit about kind of the path, and for me, and it was, college was really a black box for me. I mean, it's literally like I knew nothing about it whatsoever. I think I applied to a school that sent me a brochure. It seemed like a nice-looking school. I applied, and luckily I got a full scholarship there, but I mean, that's how, I think about how random that was, right? It's like, okay, I got a brochure, I applied with the assistance of some college counselors at my high school. Again, like I said, my parents didn't know, like just couldn't help me through the process. And so this, I think my life's mission, and I think part of like why I'm so excited to be working with colleagues here is just to, like, let's blow up that black box, right? It doesn't have to be a black box. Like, it should be accessible for our students. So even thinking about, the belonging piece, I think is so important, because even when you make it to college, showing up and seeing no one that looked like me, nobody. And that was also really hard. I was like, well, I thought I belonged here, I got admitted, but do I really belong here? Maybe I don't, and the amount of times I thought about dropping out, and luckily I had a couple people to support me along the way, but to me, I keep that very close and upfront, because I think it's only by, like, unfortunately, that's still the circumstance for many, many of our students, right? And so only by having that lived experience and having educators that know what it's like and can design to get rid of those barriers is that we can design a new future. So I'm excited to participate with Study Hall with my colleagues here.
Yeah, I'd say my own college experience was actually kind of interesting. Both of my parents went to college in Jamaica during a time when university education was free on the island, and there was a certain period of that in the post-colonial period after independence. But none of my grandparents had ever really been to school. And so when I graduated from high school, my last surviving grandparent, my grandfather, sat me down, and he had never been to school in any capacity, and he just started weeping and said, now that I've seen all my children through school and my grandchildren through the worst of things, like, I feel happy. And at the time, it didn't really make sense to me, because I thought everyone goes to high school. Like, this isn't a big accomplishment, it's not significant. But it wasn't until, speaking more with him and with my parents, there was this sense that it actually was this incredible privilege. But on the same note, we didn't really understand the American college application process. Like, we were learning about the SATs together. We were learning about what an AP class was together, because it was just a completely different educational system that they went through, and it's not transparent. So one of the things I really love about Study Hall is that it's taking some of the traditional barriers of entry and lowering them for students, and saying, we're not now judging you based on what insider knowledge or access you have to know how to do the application right or how to fill out financial aid right. We're making all of that transparent, so that ultimately your success is dependent on your drive and your desire, and not necessarily these access issues. So I was curious if you wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about Study Hall, what we're all here to actually discuss. So how did this partnership come about, and what are some of the ways it's combating traditional access issues in education?
I mean, so we have people approach us pretty frequently at Crash Course. I think people kind of see it as a big, juicy something, and so very, very skeptical about that. And some of our team went to an event that YouTube was throwing, and I don't even know. I don't know if it was you or if it was Heather or someone was like dragged Arizona State University and Crash Course folks together and was like, kiss. And
I think that Wayne sat down next to John at lunch.
Okay.
No, John sat down next to Wayne and said, "What do you do?"
Oh, just like that?
Yeah.
Kiss. Yeah.
Your story's better.
Seems possible. Yeah, and I remember like what came out of that conversation. I wasn't there, and I was just like, I didn't know ASU from a hole in the wall, really. And so I was, like, we talk to people all the time, and like, I don't like just like, I like it when it's our idea, not when it comes from someone. And my dad is so great. And he read like 3 books about ASU. And he got on the phone with me and he was like, I think these people are legit. I think that they want to do it different, man. I think that and he told me this sort of like ASU pitch, which is all like, we've ended up in a situation where schools judge themselves by how exclusive they are, by how many people they say no to. And ASU is out here being like, what if we judge ourselves by how many people we teach instead of that, by how many people we can help succeed? And we aren't trying to get to a 3% acceptance rate. And I live in Missoula, Montana, where the school has a 100% acceptance rate, and everybody like makes fun of them for it. And I'm like, well, but like that's everybody who wanted to go. That's good. They have some issues. Anybody from UM here? Can I talk freely? And so like getting that and then having a bunch of conversations. It took me so long to soften up to the idea. I'm very precious about it. But starting to realize the scale and also starting to realize that I wasn't just trying to solve problems for people like me. This is very typical but terrible of me. That I had to understand that there was a broader set of problems that we could be taking on.
I do think that we didn't say kiss, but we were really excited at this idea of.
I didn't mean literally, but I feel like there was enthusiasm coming.
There was
off
enthusiasm.
Of
there was enthusiasm, and I think perhaps
and that enthusiasm felt like it might have money attached to it.
Well, I think it had a lot of energy behind it to think about how each individual part of this partnership couldn't really solve the problem, right? It's too daunting, it's too big. And so if you think about each of these, what is so special about this pairing is that you have these 3 different organizations and they each have a very specific skill set and expertise that's totally complementary and doesn't overlap. You have the rigor of the world-class ASU faculty and instructional design. You have the unbelievable history and the compelling storytelling of Crash Course that also knows how to build communities of learners that support each other around that content. And then you have the universally accessible and open platform of YouTube. And those 3 entities together have created something that really couldn't be done alone. So yes, we did have a lot of enthusiasm for the project.
Just to give the problem a little context, if your parents have a bachelor's degree, 70% of you have a bachelor's degree. If your parents do not have a college education, only 20% of you have a college degree, right? And so for us at ASU, measuring ourselves by who we include, we know there's a long way to go from solving the issues of the status quo and that we can't do it alone. Right? And so chipping away of why is there that inequity and how do we make access to this information as accessible as possible and in a way that meet learners where they were. And guess what? They were on the Crash Course channel on YouTube. And so that's where we were going to be because we wanted to be where the students were and know that ASU is supporting them through their college journey. And so it was really exciting when my team brought the idea to me to support it and say, yes, we're going to do this together.
I guess I was not at that initial meeting. I was not encouraged to kiss anyone, but I got an email I think from Julie from Complexly saying that there was this new project and kind of outlining it, and whatever conversation happened right after that was the one about and there's going to be pathways to like affordable college credit for learners on YouTube, and I was like, that sounds awesome. I'm in. I want to see how this is going to work. But I also feel like I'm easily swayed by emails from Complexly that I get every once in a while, or text messages from people there where I'm like, oh, they have a way about them, a charm, I would say,
compelling.
They're very compelling in getting people to sign up on the educational mission. And I think one of the things that I just found really exciting about this is that I am a pretty conventional learner. I was a kid in school who loved if you can imagine testing, I really liked going to the library and picking random books off the shelf. I mean, I had just a conventional way of learning, but as I've entered the classroom space as an educator, I realized that not everyone is actually being well served by that model. And if we can bridge those gaps of who's actually getting served by the models, I think that that's what really excited me. And so I was happy to host the U.S. History to 1865. I've said that over like 100 times now, probably because of all the episodes. But I was happy to host and also just to be involved and to see how this has really developed and progressed. So my next question for everyone, and I'm wondering if we should shift the flow, just shift things up, like go this way now. If we could say like, why study hall and why now? What is important about this moment that makes this project so urgent and so important?
Yeah. Well, I talked a little bit about the inequities, right, and who's going to college and who has access to college. So I think that, to me, is a really urgent issue. The other is the cost of education has really increased pretty dramatically. So over the last 20 years, tuition for public universities has gone up 180%, right? So it's about 9% a year. And so I think one of the big barriers is figuring out, well, how am I going to pay for this? I know I literally chose a college over $500, right? So it matters. Cost matters. And I think also, like I said, opening up that black box. You're asked to apply to something that you don't really know about, and you don't get any peeks in unless you get in and commit to paying a huge amount. It just doesn't make sense, right? Why can't people see what it's like to take a college course on an easily accessible platform? So to us, it just, if you're really learner-centric and you think about what students need, it just made so much, almost common sense to move in this direction.
I think that the thing about the model that feels very different and why it felt really important to do right now, for all of the reasons that Maria has been talking about how to scale the daunting challenges that we face around scaling access to high quality education, it felt like you have to start with the learner, who on YouTube is actually intrinsically motivated to be there, wants to learn, like you, Danielle, maybe not in a stack of books, but is really excited about the content that they're engaging with. And it's not just that they're learning, they're actually getting the full context of why they're learning. So I love the College Foundations courses, I love your course, but a learner knows why they're in that content because they understand that that was chosen because it's part of a gen ed curriculum. It's going to be it's going to be a sort of foundational building block of many majors that they might study, and those majors are going to lead to certain professions, and hopefully they're going to find that pathway to economic opportunity and advancement through something that they actually love to do. And they know all of that because the College Foundations courses are wrapped in a comprehensive plan with How to College series and a fast guides to majors and electives. And so all of those things come together to give you a sense of where you are in a process and where you might want to go. There's a tremendous amount of agency as a learner. The other thing that felt really different about this and really of the moment is with all of the black box and with all of the moments of friction that create so much disempowerment, because even if you know the process, it's still incredibly complex, but if you've never been through it before, it's completely opaque. And it's not just the exorbitant cost of the degree, but also just the pressure that puts on a young person, the burden of that financial responsibility. So when we were thinking about how do we create a fundamentally different approach, we thought about all of the different places where you could remove friction, and we maniacally tried to remove those blockers. So I'll give you a couple of examples. The content lives on YouTube, which is a very familiar and comfortable place for our learners. They know how to learn there and be successful. And then we, as seamlessly as possible, move you into another surface that is also very comfortable for a majority of high school students, in this country at least, Google Classroom. And that process that used to take about 70 clicks of registering to get into a university's learning environment, we got down to, I think, 6.
I did it this morning.
And was it 6?
Sign up for another class because
You signed up for another? How many are you up to? Like, how much time do you have?
I can't not take the classes. I got to see all the bugs myself. I'll call you about them. It was very fast.
It's fast. And again, removing friction, it's $25 to access that coursework, but you don't pay for that credit as a learner until you have earned it, until you feel really satisfied with it and you know exactly what you want to do it. So at every point, we're trying to put the agency back into the learner hands, and all the things that have been designed through, legacy systems that were designed to meet the needs of the faculty or the institution, we've tried to remove them to really make sure the learner is at the center of this process.
Totally. I got here to this building this morning, and I went into the expo hall to see all of the people, just to sort of let the industry wash over me a little bit, because it is the second largest industry in America, and if you look at higher ed specifically, it's very much like healthcare in that it has continued to get more expensive, faster than inflation every year for 60 years. And every year that happens, it does objectively, in that way at least, get worse for the students. There is a point at which, if you keep doing that, it isn't worth it for most students anymore. And the graph is very linear. It's 9% a year for a long time. And that should be terrifying. I think it should be terrifying for people as citizens, and I think it should be terrifying for people who work in that industry. Because you didn't get into this to make a bunch of money. You got into this because you want to help people, and if we're helping people less effectively, that's scary. And two, we need people to get educated because it's good for people, including all of the other people. So. Taking that and looking at the barriers and trying to identify the big ones and the sub barriers. And so there's cost, big barrier. There's knowledge of the system, big barrier, and there's learning, which isn't easy. Otherwise, you could do it on your own. There are ways to lower all of those barriers. And we're not the only people who are gonna, we have to be trying things. We have to be looking at that problem and figuring out ways to interface with it in any way we can. And I'm just so happy to have been able to be a part of a way to try and do that. And I know that lots of people are trying to do that right now. So laser focus on trying to lower those barriers and eliminate those frictions.
But one of the other things about study hall, yes, learning is hard, but it doesn't have to be joyless.
No.
And
I did before study hall, I took a sort of college prep math course that joyless is the kindest word for the experience I had. It was misery. There was no instruction. It was just here's the problems, do the problems until you get through the problems. But the system to put the numbers into the places was so bad that I would get, and then you would lose points if you'd get it wrong, and then you'd have to do even more, and I'd be I only got that wrong because you wouldn't let me put the exponent in the right place. I was oh, if you can do this, you can do anything. Yes, you should accept any student who can make it through this entire process because they are a gem. They are amazing. They are also extremely patient. Far more patient than me. If you built that system, I'm sorry. If you know what I'm talking about, I don't know who did it, but I wanted to die.
But to add on that, I think design is really important. We just finished, or not quite, but we're getting over a global pandemic where lots of people did online learning really badly, and we had a lot of learning loss over the last 2-3 years, right? And we have to. I think we lost some ground, frankly, in people wanting to say, oh, well, how do you actually enhance student outcomes through digitally enhanced education, right? Because they experienced a really bad experience. So one of the things I love about this project and working with YouTube and Complexly is showing what's possible, with a digital platform, showing what's possible with online education, showing that it can be engaging, high quality, and that students can do well.
I think it's also worth noting that we are at the very beginning of it. Like, movies weren't great a year after movies, you know? And so you had like the period of time where you were just filming a play. And we had that time where we were just filming the play. It was like literally MOOCs. It was just like, let's put the camera in the back of the classroom and Harvard is free. And I think that we learned that that's not how it's going to be. And I don't think that we're there, like all the way there yet. I think that we'll continue getting better at this. We just have to like keep focused on what we actually want to do, which is help students.
That's great. I wonder, so as I look at my cheat sheet, what makes Study Hall different from other multi-platform solutions? So what makes it stand out, and what do you think is the future for Study Hall? Because as Hank says, we're right at the beginning, and things could always evolve and change and shift and become even more interesting, even more engaging. So those are kind of my two questions.
Sure. Well, I think this notion of meeting learners where they are is a driving force of the sort of principle around what we've been trying to do. I think is different. I think this idea of deep public-private partnership in this sustained model for the long term, knowing that we're at the very beginning of what we're trying to do, but that our principle is scale, infinite scale, but individual success, where we want to make sure that every single student feels seen, they feel that they have a place and that they belong. I will say that part of what I love about learning on YouTube is the immediacy of the connection between the learner and the creator and learners and other learners. And I do think that spirit is infused throughout this study hall program in a way that I think is really special. And I've seen it with both of you in just the past 2 days. When people see you and they feel like they've learned from you, yes, but they also feel seen by you. It's like every one of us who had that like lucky experience of having that one teacher who like sparked some curiosity for us and helped us see the world in a different way and maybe our place in it, and all of a sudden made us think that we could be successful to do something we didn't think we could do otherwise. Those teachers, those amazing teachers, are in classrooms of 30 students, or they're on YouTube channels of 3 million learners. And because of the breadth and depth of the YouTube library of learning content, there is a good chance that as a learner, you are going to find that teacher that resonates with you, that makes you feel seen, that makes you believe that you can maybe do something you didn't realize you could do. And see it, be it, we know representation matters in education, and this pathway is different because you choose, you get to decide when I want to learn, who I want to learn from, how I want to learn, and keeping all of that agency in the hands of the learner instead of all of the other stakeholders feels like a fundamentally different way of approaching the problem.
As far as the future, I think the important thing is to keep looking at what is working and not get stuck in any particular way of doing it. You have to listen, you have to see, and you have to be inspired by others and let people be inspired by you and go back and forth. And I think that the internet spawns genres like we used to get individual episodes of a TV show. Like there's just so much always happening that you have to continue to change. You have to continue to change with expectations of the viewer. You have to keep trying to look like a YouTube video while also being an educational thing. So I think it's gonna look different in the future. And I think it also it has to be, you start to build for the platform that you exist inside of. And right now, the platform that we exist inside of is one way, and I think it's going to keep changing. And so you have to let there be space for it to continue to evolve. Listen to what the teachers are saying, listen to what the students are saying, and build the thing that's better.
Yeah, I definitely, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I definitely agree with listening to students. I think that's the place where I feel I get the best information. Like sometimes I'll, be teaching and I'm just getting blank stares, blank faces or something. I'm like, what's going on? Let's do a touch point. But I also think students now are even different than when I was in high school in the infancy of YouTube, where YouTube was mostly people uploading like, grainy videos of themselves doing silly things.
Yeah, me. That was me.
And it's evolved into such a rich like ecosystem of information and sharing and community. But I will say, and I don't know,
And nothing bad.
and
Only
nothing bad,
good stuff.
only good things.
There are no bad things on YouTube.
But like the only time I think I was really stumped by a student, I think I told Katie this, was I had a student who was a huge fan of Crash Course. He had one of the OG Crash Course t-shirts that he wore to class like at least once a week, and he clearly wanted to talk to me about it. And I was just like, we're not going there. We're not going there. Like, you can wear your shirt and you can look at me with hopeful eyes, but that's what it is. And
That's the difference between you and me. I'd be like, sir, you, teacher's pet,
I know.
A+.
He was a wonderful student. I have nothing but good memories of him, but I just remember that t-shirt every class, and I screened one Crash Course video and he almost fainted. So it was really endearing just to see how like video can really impact like educators. I love hearing from educators who use things in the classroom and say that it's helpful and productive. But I think also like moving forward, I'd love to see ways like Study Hall that YouTube can be even more interactive. So it's not just like the passive reception of knowledge, but how do we apply, engage, and evolve that knowledge? And I think that is definitely like what I would be excited to see as Study Hall keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, remain nervous about that. Like, creating Crash Course for me has always been like, okay, we're gonna make this and leave it. And if you want it, take it, and if not, don't take it. And it won't be like all the things that, avoid the bureaucracy, avoid the sales teams, just make something that's better than what our competitors are making, and I'll give it away for free. That's the only way to compete with the higher ed monopolies. If you could make it free and better than them, then you can win. You can't make any money, but YouTube will solve that problem for us, we hope. And to back off from that strategy a little bit and say, okay, let's see what we can actually do with this and put it into a system that could actually be, that is part of a learning journey that's going to have educators interfacing directly with it, that's going to lead toward college credit. That's super scary for me. Like, my strategy has always been like, this is just for you guys. If you want it, take it. If not, don't. And to actually get into the system, like, we had to be really thoughtful about it to make sure that we, I don't think that we're going to be perfect or anything, but to try and do it the best we can.
And I think it's important to know that this is just one of many options, right?
Yeah.
At ASU, we have 90,000 students on our campus, coming to campus every day, like the traditional students. We also have 90,000 students in our ASU online program that are doing it completely digitally across
How do you
the
handle
nation.
parking? 90,000? How do they get there? That sounds very hard. Different campuses.
Lots of public transit, too.
Okay, good. Excellent.
But this is yet another way, right? We have to acknowledge that because we are not where we need to be from a status quo, that means we should be trying as many different pathways as possible for our students, not saying this one's better than this one, but saying meeting learners where they are. What option do you need? What pathway do you need? And designing for that.
So what must universities and industry partners who are interested in innovating education do to continue to help high school learners and college hopefuls?
We have to fix taxes. So if it would be great if we didn't. Never mind. I mean, how did we end up in a situation where we fund schools with property taxes? Like, what a monstrous idea. But we're not gonna. We can clap for it, but what are we gonna do? Okay, yeah. Anybody here not vote? Because I will punch you. But I feel like we got a good set of voters. But make more voters and talk more about that problem. It's going to be a long time to interface with it, but it is monstrous. But that's the only thing that occurred to me. I'm sorry. But you have to exist inside of the universe that you're in. So we should do that. Suggestions?
I think that one of the things that to Maria's point about like this isn't replacing anything, it's augmenting. And the idea of like the existing solutions aren't sufficient. So let's put more solutions out there and let's see if we can capture other opportunity for a whole universe of students that are kind of getting left behind because they just don't know how to even find the path. And it feels like with, you know, again, if traditionally in higher education, quality has been defined by scarcity, then even the notion of democratizing access to higher education is still relatively new and radical and very hard to implement. And it feels at times like even online learning hasn't really flung open those doors of access because too many institutions are competing for the same students like me who are expected to get to college and be successful. Yet you have all of this potential, human potential that's being untapped because those folks just don't know how to find the entry point. And so I think that that's the idea that I would love is for more high school students to not just get educated by study hall, although that's wonderful, and I hope we get lots of students in classes today are going to end up with college credits, but also inspired and motivated. That this is a long journey. Learning is hard, and we can build a whole community of support around you to help you.
And I think partnership is also key. Right? At ASU, we actually already have 350 high school partners, and my team is in the front row if you would like to explore a partnership with us.
That's
Just a little plug
front
there.
Row is full.
That's why it's full. Yes.
Thank you. Doing your jobs.
But it's also, you know, we wanted to have this also be a resource for our high school teachers and our different high school partners so that they could spend their in-person time really connecting to the students and not have to replicate this curriculum over and over again. And so we are really excited to be partnering because I think that's the only way. How do we connect students both with the information, but they also need that individual support from their community and their teachers and their coaches, and we wanted to make that resource accessible for that.
Can I do something? There's a question that came up on the board. Yeah. It says, so what is study hall? How does it work? It has 3 upvotes. That's the most upvotes of any question. You can go into your little Go app and you can look at this. I feel bad about that question. Maybe we should have, I feel like we like seeded some hints around and you're putting it together in your head. But basically, there's a series of YouTube videos that have, so there's a couple series. One is a sort of how to college course that's like, here's how college works, everything from like financial aid to majors and credits and all the weird lingo. And then there is a series of like foundational college courses. There's American history through 1865, and there's rhetoric and composition, and there's real world college math course, and there's one that I'm forgetting, and we're working on a bunch of others as well. And then you can watch all those for free on YouTube, but they pull into an actual courseware solution that has teachers and a cohort of other students who can take a class with you. It's $25 to sign up. If you are happy at the end of the process with your grade and how we did teaching you, you can pay $400 or $350 for the introductory class for that college credit, which is about 1/3 of the cost of the average public university college credit in the US. And that will be ASU college credit. That will be taken anywhere that takes ASU college credits.
Which is hundreds and hundreds of universities.
Yeah, it's a lot. And because y'all are great. And it's just sort of and you can go anytime. You can do it at your own pace. It's a way to sort of flatten the ramp up into college a little bit more easily. And we've got a good number of folks signed up, and the first cohort starts today. They're talking to each other, they're doing the thing.
Launch days today.
Yeah.
This is actually a perfect time to start transitioning to some questions from the audience, so thank you for kicking that off.
I felt so bad.
Yeah, that was actually a good one that I didn't ask at the top, so I'm glad that we filled the void. So I wanted to ask this question. Do you see the concept of study halls spreading throughout higher ed? How do we get accessible content with great storytelling to more people?
Well, I think one of our goals for this is to encourage a lot of folks here to understand that all of these seemingly intractable problems are only going to be solved by deep and sustained public-private partnerships between a number of different entities, kind of thinking about how to tackle these problems at scale. And we are 3 partners here, but we know that the problem is immense, and there is room for more partners. There's room for more opportunity to reimagine how you're going to connect with learners and how you're going to think about the path. And so I am hoping that some of the folks in this room get inspired to join this mission, this model, and see if it can work for them.
And I'll just say, I think higher education institutions are coming together to collaborate on these types of innovations. At ASU, we're part of something called the University Innovation Alliance, which is a dozen or more universities across the country that are wanting to increase college, retention and college graduation, especially for Black and brown students. And I think there's been over 70,000 more students that have graduated through that collaboration. That's been, I want to say, at least 5 or maybe 8 years or so. And so it's only through that collaboration, right? We have to learn from each other. We have to be willing to be open and say, well, what you're doing over there works to increase retention and increase equity. How do we partner together? And so at least for us to, we love to partner with our private sector partners, but we're also really happy to partner with our high schools and also our higher ed counterparts.
I wanted to move on to another question that says, do students need to be out of high school to take these courses, or can they do it as dual enrollment?
They don't have to be in school.
No,
yeah,
but they could be in high school or they could be out of high school.
But is it, I don't actually know what dual enrollment means. So I should have just left that to you.
Yeah.
Why did I expose my ignorance?
The answer is yes.
I mean, I know roughly what it is, but
yeah. It's usually taking the courses and then also part of their high school curriculum. And again, we have 350 high school partners, first team here in the front row again. We can tell you all about that. But there's also, 39 million Americans with some college and no degree. And so I think these courses are also a way for people to attempt that pathway again, to say maybe the first time didn't go that great, but you know what, this is available for me and I'm going to try it. So I think it's widely accessible, not just to high school students or traditionally aged students, but really anyone that wants to start a college pathway.
I will say, though, in the spirit of meeting learners where they are, one of my goals for the study hall announcement, not for study hall, the partnership, but for the announcement, was that I have 3 teenage kids, and I was hoping that at least one of them was going to hear about study hall through their own channels. Not because I've been working on it for years, and but because it sounded cool to them as high school students. And it happened. The morning that we announced study hall, my 16-year-old son sent me a text, and it said, "Hey, this program is awesome."
And then mom just cried, right?
No, if you don't speak teenage boy, like that is literally as good as it gets. It's like there's nothing better.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Now I'm crying right now. I got a 6-year-old, he's already in a little jerk.
So next question says, Maria, you mentioned belonging. How do you create a feeling of belonging in an online environment?
I think this is really about focusing on intentional pedagogy and figuring who you're inviting in, right? And so we have a really diverse set of faculty that are teaching the courses that have had lots of different learned experiences. So when a student shows up to study hall, they can see themselves reflected in the content.
I would say, like Katie and I were talking over lunch yesterday about YouTube just as a platform. And one of the things one of my friends said to me once is like, YouTube is like this big personality engine. Like, people become really hooked on the personality of the person who runs the channel or the entities who run the channel, and it becomes really focused around that. But I actually think it is, to a certain degree, a personality engine, but it's also a community engine, because the channel doesn't grow unless people feel invested in each other in a certain kind of way. And I think one of the things that's exciting about Study Hall is that it's doing sort of traditional YouTube-y things, but also taking it off platform where people people can interact with each other in the cohort, speak to their professors, like, and there's lots of excitement around maybe, I don't know if Sean wants me to say this, I'm like looking at him now, and now we're making a lot of eye contact, I'm sorry. But, there's talk about maybe doing office hours or live streams or things that can enable people to continue to have that sense of community around the platform, but also in an online environment. And I think that's one of the things that was really challenging teaching during the pandemic entirely online, was that missing sense of connection to each other. So I'm hoping that we could do the thing that YouTube does great, even better in this context.
Yeah, I think about this all the I kind of realized in this process, thinking back to my own education journey, that teachers do some teaching, that's for sure. They do a lot of other stuff, and one of the things is motivation. They're it's like the personal trainer that you're I'm not going to work out, but I will because Jeffrey's there waiting for me, and I'm gonna if I don't show up, he's gonna be mad, and so having and that peer group also provides some of that, and just provides some support and some compassion during the moments in physical chemistry where you're ready to just stab the refrigerator for some reason. And I did that once. It was PChem's bad. Very bad, thank you. And that is absolutely, I think, probably the biggest challenge to solve here. And that's going to be the one that takes time. My entire career is based on building community online, and I still see this as a very tough nut. And so I think that, it's, especially because even in that situation where we've got, I've been making videos on YouTube for over 16 years, and we have a really strong community, but I'm aware that I hear from less than 10% of them. They're the people who are actually in the comments or replying to me on Twitter, it's just a vanishingly small actual percentage. And so you're always going to have those people who are in there but invisible, and how to make those people feel included, I think, is something that's going to have to take time to figure out how that works. And and also I think it doesn't replace a classroom. I think there is definitely work that is done by being in physical space together that is never duplicatable. Sorry, Mark Zuckerberg.
Excuse me, this sounded like I was tearing up about Hank's beautiful response, but actually I just had a frog in my throat.
You're just very sorry for Mark.
Yeah, I was so this question says, this model is so interesting. How do accreditors and the Department of Education feel about it?
Oh, I thought that was the Department of Energy. I was I don't think they care.
I don't think they have a buy-in.
Well, these are accredited ASU courses. They're same credit as any of our other courses. And so our accreditors are actually been very supportive of us as we move into these innovative directions, because they know that's what students need. So we haven't talked to the Department of Education, and we would love to do that so that students could get financial aid for these courses as well.
Awesome. I'm trying to, it's a little hard to read because there's a lot of glare.
The lights are bright.
So, here's one that looks interesting. How did you get faculty to buy into this concept?
Well, Danielle, you're a faculty member.
So Julie emailed me?
Well, outside of the persuasive emails, and there was a video of Hank in the email. It was you talking, there was a video about you talking about the challenges of education, and you seemed very impassioned. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy seems like he knows what's up. But I think it's actually, for me as a faculty member, I teach classes that are usually pretty niche and pretty small. And sometimes I get students who maybe haven't had a U.S. history course in many years, or they haven't, learned about world history outside of really European history. And I think it's interesting to see how we can bridge those gaps. So when I heard about this course, I thought, a general ed history course that everyone who goes through education in the U.S. should take a course like this of some kind, should know the history of our collective story, which is what history really is. And I think there was another question about great storytelling, and I think that's also one of the things that I thought was really important about this project. I always say that if I'm making a YouTube video about history, which can be very dry, I love history. I can't predict the future, which is why I study the past. But I love it, but it's also not necessarily inherently always interesting to people. But if I can talk to someone as if I'm talking to my friend and telling them a great story that really is interesting to me, then I feel like I've done something and shifted something for a learner. And if I can get them to think analytically and critically about the stories they've been told about humanity, about justice, about race, about society, I think that that's what's really important. So yeah, you know, the video of Hank kind of helped because I was like, oh, this is an urgent issue and I think I should get on board. But it also was the team at ASU, all the faculty members who did such careful, interesting, rigorous work to build the course out and to integrate stories about America and identity that really don't get often told in high school classrooms and are in some ways under attack in high school classrooms. So the buy-in for me was pretty easy. I was persuaded very easily to join the dance, and I'm really glad that I did it. And I'm excited to continue that partnership, hint, hint, for other courses.
But Daniel, your course it has all of these very complex concepts, and yet it has a tremendous amount of fun and whimsy, and I'll never forget the baseball people, and if you all don't know what I'm talking about, you should go check out Danielle's course. But you bring a sense of promise, hope, excitement, enthusiasm into it. So I think it's anyway, it's a wonderful experience, even though you are dealing with very complex and very rich topic.
I'm trying to see if we have one more question to wrap this up. And the light is still really bright. Is this limited to undergraduate level courses, or can this be applied to graduate level ones as well?
It's undergraduate for now.
Okay. So does anyone have any closing thoughts as we wrap up the panel? Something that I didn't ask, something that's burning in your spirit to impart to our wonderful, beautiful audience members before we close?
Well, for me, first of all, I'm really excited and honored to be here with you today because this is a group of education innovators, of equity warriors, of people that are not satisfied with the status quo because we know we can do better for our students and our community. And so I'm just excited to be here with you. And so I would just open it up and say, if you have ideas, if you want to partner, like please come talk to me and us afterwards, because I think the only way we move the needle forward is to partner together.
I don't have a lot to add to that. I think that that's exactly right. I think YouTube is just the platform for the distribution of this wonderful content, but it takes a lot of partners to want to put that wonderful content on the platform and to think about, with a lot of intentionality, the users and their needs. And I'll just leave you with one. If you're ever in need for an emotional pick-me-up, the comments on the study hall channel are just a real bright spot on the internet of wonderfulness.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really grateful there's been so many people who have thought so hard about this on this team, the people who have been working on this, but I know that there are also people all over the place who are constantly working on this and trying to make the world a little bit of a better place, because we all need to know more stuff. Yeah, so I'm really grateful to be in this room with all these cool people. So thanks so much.
Yeah, and I think that will be the final word. So thank you so much for coming. We'll be around for the next few minutes to answer any questions or to chat. And thank you so much for attending the session.